Welcome back, and thank you for tuning in to HK Cheating Stories. We appreciate each and every one of you joining us. Where in the world are you watching from? Let us know in the comments. Now, let's get the story started. My name is Nathan Hayes, and if you told me a month ago that a simple family dinner would unravel my entire life, I would have laughed. I'm not the kind of man who makes scenes. I keep my head down, do the right thing, love hard, and stay loyal. But that night, that slap, it woke something in me I didn't know was there. What started as humiliation in front of my wife's family turned into a discovery that would shatter everything I thought I knew. You think you've seen betrayal? You haven't heard my story yet. Let me tell you how it all began. I never imagined a family dinner could be the event that shattered everything. Not a betrayal, not infidelity, just a dinner. We were barely 10 minutes in when it happened. But I remember every detail as if time slowed to torture me. Claire, my wife, had insisted we go. "It'll be quick," she said. "Just dinner with my parents. You haven't seen them in weeks." And truthfully, I didn't want to. Margaret, her mother, had always despised me. She'd made it clear since day one that she thought I wasn't good enough. I wasn't from the right kind of family, didn't have the right career, the right pedigree, the right anything. In her eyes, Claire had settled by marrying me. Still, I went. For Claire. I always did. The table was set with porcelain plates that probably hadn't been touched since the Reagan administration. The food was overcooked, as usual, but everyone laughed and smiled like we were in some sort of family sitcom. Margaret was in rare form, boasting about her latest charity event, subtly reminding everyone how well-bred people should behave. And me? I sat quietly. I smiled when expected. I nodded at her stories. I drank the cheap red wine she pretended was imported. Then it happened. I got up to refill my glass. Just a simple moment, a turn of my body, and as I stepped back from the sideboard, I barely brushed against Margaret's shoulder. It was nothing. A touch. Less than a whisper of contact. But in her twisted world, it was enough. She turned, slowly, like a villain in a movie, her eyes narrow, her lips already curled in disgust. Smack. The slap echoed through the dining room like a gunshot. Sharp. Loud. Violent. My cheek stung immediately, the heat blooming beneath my skin like a brand. But that wasn't the worst part. No, what truly burned was the silence that followed. The stunned stillness. The judgmental eyes of every person in the room turning to me like I was the one who'd lost control. Margaret's voice sliced through the silence. "How dare you touch me, you disgusting man," she hissed, as if I'd done something vile. "Clean my dress and get out." My mouth opened. Nothing came out. My brain struggled to process the absurdity of what just happened. I didn't yell. I didn't react. I just turned, slowly, to the one person who was supposed to be in my corner. Claire. Her expression was unreadable. Cold. Almost bored. And then she said the words that would echo in my mind forever. "Apologize to her, or leave." I thought she was joking. She had to be. She saw what happened. Everyone did. "Claire," I said, voice hoarse. She slapped me. In front of everyone. I didn't do anything. She didn't flinch. Didn't blink. "You shouldn't have touched her," she said, like I was the one out of line. "You know how she is. Just apologize and let it go." Let it go? My vision blurred, not from tears, but from disbelief. Was I in some twisted dream? Had my wife really just sided with her mother? After that? No. No, I wasn't dreaming. This was real. And in that moment, something inside me broke. Or maybe it finally woke up. I had spent years swallowing my pride, letting Margaret insult me with passive-aggressive digs, letting Claire brush off my concerns with empty smiles and she means well excuses. I had endured family functions, fake smiles, backhanded compliments, all for Claire. For love. But now? Now I saw the truth. Clear and sharp as a razor. Claire didn't just tolerate her mother's abuse, she enabled it. I stood still for another second. The room was still quiet, but the tension was suffocating. Everyone waited for my response. Maybe they expected me to grovel. Maybe they expected a dramatic meltdown. They got neither. I looked at Claire, really looked at her, and saw not the woman I had married, but a stranger. Someone who saw me as nothing more than a convenient placeholder in her perfect little life. I gave her a small nod. No words. No drama. Just a silent goodbye. And then I turned and walked out. No slamming doors. No shouting. Just the sound of my footsteps fading into the hallway as I left that cursed house behind me. As I stepped into the night, the cool air kissed the side of my face where Margaret's slap still burned. But I welcomed the cold. I needed it. It grounded me, cleared my mind. They thought I left in shame, but I didn't. I left in silence to prepare. Because this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. I didn't go straight home. I drove in circles for nearly an hour, headlights cutting through the quiet streets as my thoughts raced faster than the engine ever could. The slap had faded into a dull sting, but the humiliation? That still screamed in my veins. I gripped the steering wheel tighter with each memory that surfaced. Margaret's twisted face, the stunned silence of the room, Claire's voice cutting through my heart like a scalpel. Apologize to her, or leave. That wasn't just a command, it was a verdict. And it told me everything I needed to know. When I finally pulled into our driveway, the house looked different. Colder, darker, like a shell of something that once felt like home, but now felt foreign. I shut off the engine, but didn't move. I sat there in the silence, watching the glow of the porch light flicker above the door. I should have walked inside. I should have talked to Claire. Yelled. Demanded answers. Something. But I didn't. Because what was there to say? She'd already answered the only question that mattered. Who she stood with when it counted. And it wasn't me. I leaned back against the headrest, closed my eyes, and took a deep breath. But it didn't help. The tightness in my chest didn't ease. My heart pounded like it was trying to punch its way out. I felt betrayed, discarded. Years of compromise, of biting my tongue, of letting her family trample me with smug smiles and judgmental glances. It all came rushing back in a tidal wave of suppressed anger. I thought of the little things I'd let slide. The way Claire would laugh along when Margaret made those playful insults about my job, my background. The way she stopped holding my hand in public. The way she started correcting me in front of her parents, like she was embarrassed by the man sitting next to her. I had convinced myself she was just caught in the middle, that it was hard for her, that her mother was difficult. But now, I saw it for what it was. Claire hadn't been caught in the middle. She had made a choice. And tonight, she made it again. Clearly. I don't know how long I sat in the car, but eventually the porch light turned off. That used to mean she was waiting for me. Now, it felt like a door being closed forever. Eventually, I walked inside. Claire was in the living room, arms crossed, face blank like she'd been rehearsing for a soap opera. She didn't even say welcome home. Just watched me with that guarded look, half guilt, half irritation. You're back, she said, as if I had returned from picking up groceries, not storming out of her family's dinner after being assaulted. I didn't respond. I walked past her, straight to the kitchen, and poured myself a glass of water. My hands were steady, but my pulse was hammering beneath the surface. She followed, stopping in the doorway. Are you going to talk to me? I set the glass down and turned toward her. Talk to you about what? Her eyes narrowed. Don't play dumb. You embarrassed my mother. I actually laughed. A bitter, sharp laugh that caught her off guard. I embarrassed her? I repeated, shaking my head. She slapped me in front of a room full of people, Claire. And you told me to apologize. Claire shifted uncomfortably, crossing her arms tighter. She overreacted, okay? But you know how she is. She was raised differently. She values respect. I barked out another laugh. Respect? The woman who just disrespected me in front of everyone. I took a step closer. And what about you, Claire? Do you value respect? Because you sure as hell didn't show me any tonight. She flinched. Just a flicker, but then her face hardened. Why are you making such a big deal out of this? I stared at her, searching her face for something. Anything. Regret. Guilt. Remorse. But all I saw was annoyance. That was it. That was the moment it all crystallized in my mind. She didn't care how I felt. She never did. Not really. Claire, I said quietly. Tell me something. She hesitated. What? If I had slapped your mother tonight, in front of everyone, would you have told her to apologize to me? Her mouth opened slightly, but no sound came out. The hesitation was brief, but it told me everything. She wouldn't have. Not in a million years. I nodded slowly. The weight of that realization settled into my bones like concrete. I see. She frowned. What does that mean? It means, I said, keeping my voice even, I finally understand where I stand in this marriage. Oh my God, stop being so dramatic, she scoffed. It was one night. One argument. You're really going to act like our entire marriage is ruined because of it. I let out a breath through my nose. Looked away. No, I said. Our marriage was ruined long before tonight. She tensed. Excuse me. You stopped respecting me a long time ago, Claire. I just refused to see it. You're being ridiculous. You're blowing this out of proportion. Maybe, I said with a cold smile. Or maybe I've just finally had enough. She opened her mouth to argue, but I didn't wait to hear it. I turned and walked past her. Where are you going? She called after me. To get some sleep. It was a lie. I wasn't going to sleep. I was going to think. Think about the years I had wasted. Think about the respect I had let slip through my fingers. Think about the man I used to be before I let them turn me into this. And most importantly, I was going to think about what came next. Because tonight wasn't the end of this. It was only the beginning. Sleep never came. I laid in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the slow, rhythmic ticking of the wall clock, each second dragging like a weighted breath. Claire didn't come to bed. I could hear the distant hum of the television downstairs, some late-night comedy show she probably wasn't even watching. She was avoiding me. But that was fine. I didn't want to see her face, not after the way she'd looked at me like I was the one who ruined everything. My cheek had stopped stinging, but my pride hadn't. It felt like something had been ripped out of me, rough and irreversible. I sat up, rubbed my face, and swung my legs over the edge of the bed. The house felt unnervingly quiet, like it was holding its breath. I walked to the window and looked out at the dark street. A few porch lights were still on across the neighborhood. Other families, probably asleep. Safe. Whole. Not like us. And that's when it hit me. Claire hadn't always been this way. There was a time, years ago, when she was warm, protective, loving. But somewhere along the way, that warmth had turned to frost. She had started echoing Margaret's mannerisms, her tone, her sharp little digs masked as jokes. It hadn't been sudden. No, it had been slow, like poison seeping into a well, undetectable until you were already drinking it. Margaret had changed her. Or maybe, Margaret had simply revealed the parts of Claire that had always been there, buried beneath the surface. Either way, I was done pretending. I grabbed my phone from the nightstand and stared at it. My thumb hovered over the screen. There was only one person I could call. One person who wouldn't just listen, but do something. Derek Monroe. My best friend since college. A man who didn't just survive chaos, he thrived in it. He wasn't just smart. He was surgical. A licensed attorney with a deep love for truth, especially when it tore down the right people. I dialed. The phone rang twice before he answered. It's past midnight, he grumbled, voice thick with sleep. This better be good. I let out a breath that was half laugh, half exhaustion. Oh, it's good. A pause. Talk to me, he said, voice suddenly sharper. I need a favor. Name it. I clenched my jaw. I need you to dig into Margaret Dalton. Another pause. Then a low whistle. Your mother-in-law? She's hiding something, I said. I don't know what, but I know the way she moves. The way she talks. There's a trail. You just have to find it. Derek chuckled, the edge of excitement already in his voice. Finally ready to fight back? More than ready. Good, he said. Give me a few hours. I'll find something. I ended the call and stared at the phone in my hand, a strange calm settling over me. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't second-guessing myself. I wasn't making excuses for Claire or swallowing the bile of Margaret's disdain. No, this wasn't about revenge. It was about respect. Something I should have demanded years ago. I lay back down, but I didn't try to sleep. I just stared at the ceiling, thoughts swirling. They thought I'd walked out in shame, that I'd come crawling back once I cooled off, that I'd let it go like I always did. They were wrong. I wasn't leaving in defeat. I was preparing for war. By the time the sun rose, I was still wide awake. Claire still hadn't come upstairs. Maybe she thought avoiding me would make it easier. Or maybe she was hoping the whole thing would blow over. Not this time. I got dressed slowly, deliberately, my mind razor-sharp. I brewed coffee, sat at the kitchen table, and waited. At 9:02 a.m., my phone buzzed. Derek, you're going to want to see this. My pulse jumped. I grabbed my keys, slipped out the door without a word to Claire, and drove straight to Derek's office. He was waiting with a folder already in hand, and that familiar smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth. That was fast, I said as I stepped in. I don't play around, he replied, sliding the folder across the desk. Take a look. I opened it. My eyes scanned the pages. And then I froze. Wire transfers. Bank accounts under aliases. Shell companies. Property listed in a false name. But the biggest bombshell, Margaret had been paying for hotel rooms. Flights. Lavish dinners. Who's she meeting? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Derek leaned back in his chair. His name's Carson Hale. divorced, runs some sketchy consulting firm. She's been seeing him for at least 4 years. Covered it up with those so-called foundation retreats. I stared at the paper, my hands tightening around the folder. She's cheating on Robert. For years, Derek said. And that's not all. She's been paying a private investigator. A serious one. Specialized in blackmail, dirt collection, intimidation tactics. I looked up, confused. Why? Derek's smirk faded. Because the subject of the investigation is you. The room felt suddenly smaller. She's been having you followed. Tracking your finances, medical records, work history, even pulled your college transcripts. I couldn't speak. She was looking for leverage, Derek said. Maybe to get Claire to leave you. Maybe to destroy you first. Either way, she's been at this for a while. I set the folder down slowly. All these years, I thought Margaret just didn't like me. But this wasn't dislike. This was a calculated attack. My fists clenched. She didn't just want me gone. She wanted me erased. And now? Now, she was going to learn what it felt like to pick the wrong man to destroy. I drove home with the folder on the passenger seat, my eyes flicking toward it every few seconds like it was some ticking bomb. And in a way, it was. Everything inside that folder, bank records, travel documents, photos, financial transactions, it all painted a portrait of Margaret Dalton I always suspected but never had proof of. She wasn't just manipulative. She was dangerous. She had built an empire of lies, and I had been stupid enough to sit at her table, smile, and pass the mashed potatoes while she plotted my downfall. But not anymore. As I pulled into the driveway, the sun had reached its peak, bathing the house in a warm glow that felt completely wrong. It looked like a happy home, white fence, trimmed lawn, a wind chime softly dancing near the front door. But I knew the truth now. This wasn't a home. It was a stage, and I had played the fool for too long. Claire was waiting for me when I stepped inside, arms folded across her chest like she'd rehearsed every line of the argument she was about to launch. Her eyes locked onto mine the second the door closed behind me. "Where were you?" she demanded, skipping the greeting entirely. I set my keys down on the entry table with a deliberate calm. "Out." She narrowed her eyes. "We need to talk." I gave her a humorless smile. "Yeah, we do." That threw her off. Her arms loosened a bit. She probably expected me to dodge or deflect. Not today. She took a breath and pushed forward. "Look, I know you're upset about what happened at dinner, but you can't just disappear without saying anything. It's childish." I tilted my head slightly. "You know what's childish, Claire? Letting your mother slap your husband across the face in front of your entire family and then expecting him to apologize for it." Her jaw tightened. "You just don't understand how she is." "Stop," I snapped, stepping toward her. "Stop defending her. This isn't about how she is. This is about how you are. You chose her. Again. Like you always do." She flinched, but quickly recovered. "You're making this into something it's not." "Am I?" I walked past her, straight into the kitchen, grabbed a glass, and poured myself some water, more for something to do with my hands than because I needed it. Claire followed, clearly unsettled by how calm I was. "Do you even respect me?" I asked, without turning around. She hesitated. That pause told me everything. I turned slowly and met her gaze. "I didn't think so." She looked away, hugging her arms like she suddenly felt cold. "What are you planning?" she asked quietly, but there was fear creeping into her voice now. I smirked. "You'll find out soon enough." Before she could respond, I walked upstairs and locked the door behind me. Hours later, the confrontation I had been waiting for arrived. I was sitting in the living room, folder in hand, sipping a glass of whiskey, when I heard a car pull into the driveway. Then the front door opened, and in walked Claire, Margaret, and Robert. Claire's face was tight, unreadable. Robert looked tense, unsure. And Margaret? Margaret walked in like she owned the place. Head high, chin raised, mouth already curled in disgust. She barely looked at me before speaking. "I assume you've had enough time to reflect on your behavior," she said, each word soaked in condescension. I took a slow sip of my drink, letting the silence stretch before I spoke. "Oh, I've done plenty of reflecting." Claire sighed. "Can we just talk about this like adults?" I set the glass down, stood up, and looked each of them in the eye. "That depends. Are you all ready to act like adults?" Margaret scoffed. "We came here for an apology. You embarrassed me in front of my guests." I laughed. A real, loud, unapologetic laugh that echoed off the walls. "Let me get this straight," I said, stepping closer. You slapped me, humiliated me in front of everyone, and now you want an apology? Margaret's lips thinned. You should have handled yourself better. Robert shifted uncomfortably beside her. Funny you say that, I said, walking over to the table. Because I did handle it better. I walked out. I didn't yell. I didn't retaliate. I walked away. I reached for the folder and flipped it open. And then I made a few calls. Margaret's eyes flicked to the folder. She still tried to act indifferent, but I saw the flicker of panic behind the mask. Tell me, Margaret, how was your last business trip? She froze. Robert looked at her, confused. What is he talking about? I pulled out the photos and tossed them onto the coffee table. Margaret, with another man, holding hands at a beachside resort, checking into a hotel, dinner in a private suite. Claire's face paled. Her mouth opened slightly, stunned. What is this? Robert whispered. Margaret was already reaching for a lie, but the words wouldn't come. I always wondered why you looked down on me, I said, my voice low. Why you acted like I was some filthy outsider. But now I get it. You weren't better than me. You were just better at hiding what you really were. Robert's face had gone pale. You've been cheating on me, he asked, his voice cracking. Margaret turned to him, desperate now. Robert, it's not what it looks like. Save it, he snapped, stepping back. I should have seen this years ago. Claire looked from her father to her mother, then to me, her voice barely above a whisper. You did this on purpose. I met her eyes without flinching. No, your mother did this to herself. Her face crumbled. For a second, I saw something close to regret. Then it hardened again. You wanted revenge. I shook my head. I wanted respect. I turned to Margaret. And since none of you thought I deserved that, I figured it was time you all got a taste of your own medicine. The room was silent. The air heavy. Margaret looked like a queen stripped of her crown. Robert looked like a man whose world had just caved in. Claire? She just looked lost. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel small. I felt in control. Margaret stormed out of the house like a furious monarch cast out of her palace, heels pounding against the hardwood, her purse clutched like a weapon. The door slammed so hard behind her that the windows rattled. Robert followed, not a word spoken, just a slow, heavy walk, a man unraveling after years of quiet obedience. His face was ghost white, but it wasn't the shock that stayed with me. It was the way he looked at me, just before he stepped out. Not with anger, not with blame, with respect. That left Claire and me, standing in the ruins of what used to be a marriage. The silence between us was thick, broken only by the faint hum of the refrigerator and the distant roar of tires pulling away. Claire's arms were folded tightly across her chest, but her confidence, her control, had clearly taken a hit. Her voice, when she finally spoke, was a whisper. I don't know who you are anymore. I turned toward her, calmly. Maybe you never did. She blinked, like the words physically stung. Do you still love me? It hung there for a long moment, between us like a ghost. I looked at her, really looked at her. Not the woman I had married, not the woman I had loved, but the woman who had sat in silence as her mother slapped me, then told me to apologize. The woman who looked confused now, not because of what Margaret had done, but because I had dared to respond. I love the woman I married, I said, quietly, but I'm not sure she exists anymore. Claire's breath hitched. Her lips parted as if to speak, but nothing came out. She looked so small in that moment, so unsure, and I didn't feel sorry for her, not even a little. I walked past her, heading toward the stairs. She called after me. You think you've won? I paused on the steps, one hand on the banister. No, Claire, I said without turning. I think I finally stopped losing. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't even try. I sat in the bedroom, lights off, just the dim glow of the streetlight filtering through the window. My mind was sharp, alive, and more than anything, clear. I had been blind for too long. I had let Margaret chip away at me, year after year, insult after insult. I had let Claire's indifference sink into my bones like poison. I had convinced myself that love meant sacrifice, that marriage meant enduring pain with a smile. But tonight had ripped away the illusion. And for the first time, I could breathe. The next morning, the house was filled with an eerie calm. Claire had retreated to the guest room. She didn't speak to me, didn't even make eye contact. Good. I had no interest in pretending anymore. At exactly 9:47 a.m., my phone buzzed. Derek, got more. I didn't even reply. I grabbed my coat, the same folder from yesterday, and left the house without a word. His office was on the top floor of a sleek downtown building, glass and steel everywhere, a place where secrets came to die. Derek was already waiting when I walked in, another folder in his hand and a satisfied look on his face. "You didn't think the affair was the end of it, did you?" he said, tossing the file onto the table. I frowned. "What else is there?" He leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "Gloria's been funneling money through shell accounts. At first, I thought it was just to pay for the affair. Hotels, gifts, that kind of thing. But then I dug deeper." He tapped the folder. "She's been making large monthly payments to a private investigator. Not just any PI either. This guy specializes in blackmail, intimidation, and, occasionally, worse." My blood ran cold. "And guess who the PI's been following?" Derek asked. I already knew. "Me," I said. He nodded. "Work schedule, bank records, medical history, even your college transcripts. She's been building a case against me," I muttered. "She's been looking for one," Derek corrected. "Digging for something to ruin you. Maybe in case Claire ever wanted a divorce. Maybe just for control. But the intent's clear." I stared at the folder in silence, the weight of it all pressing down on my chest. This wasn't some petty mother-in-law vendetta. Margaret had been orchestrating a long-term, calculated takedown of my life, my career, my identity. And Claire, whether she knew or not, had been living under that same poison roof, soaking in the same rot. "What's the plan?" Derek asked, voice low. I looked up. "We use it." He grinned. "That's what I like to hear." Just then, I heard the faint sound of heels in the hallway. I turned toward the glass wall of the office. Claire. She had followed me. She stood frozen in the doorway, pale and shaken, eyes darting to the folder, then to me. "What is this?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't hide it. I didn't soften it. I opened the folder, pulled out the newest document, and held it out to her. "Your mother's been paying a PI to dig up dirt on me. She's been trying to destroy my life." Claire blinked. That doesn't make sense." I laughed. Cold. Flat. "Doesn't it?" "Because to me, it makes perfect sense. It's exactly who she is." Her lip trembled. "She wouldn't." "She did." I cut her off. "And I'm done pretending she's just strict or old-fashioned. She's a manipulative liar who's been trying to ruin me from the beginning." Claire's breathing turned ragged, eyes brimming with something that looked like panic. "Why would she do this?" I stepped closer, lowered my voice. "Because in her eyes, I was never good enough for you. And you never stood up for me." She looked at me like she didn't recognize the man in front of her. And that's when I realized something. I didn't care what she saw, because I wasn't that man anymore. I was done being the victim. And now, I was the reckoning. Claire didn't speak for a long time. She just stood there, eyes locked on the pages in her trembling hands, the truth unraveling right in front of her. I watched her mouth open, close, then open again, like she wanted to argue, to defend, to deny. But what could she say? What possible excuse could smooth over what her mother had done? "She's my mother," she finally whispered. "And I was your husband," I replied, voice steady, cold. "But you never treated me like one." Claire's shoulders sagged. I could see the fight leaving her, replaced by something far worse, confusion. She wasn't just questioning me anymore. She was questioning herself, her choices, her silence, the years she let Margaret manipulate not only our marriage but her identity. "What are you going to do?" she asked, voice barely audible. I stared at her, then looked down at the folder in my hand. "What do you think?" I asked. Her lips trembled. "You're going to destroy her." I didn't confirm it. I didn't have to. I walked past her, folder tucked under my arm, and left the office with Derek trailing behind me. Claire didn't follow. She just stood there, frozen in the doorway of the truth she'd spent years pretending didn't exist. I was done holding back. When we got back to the house, the air felt different, heavier, electric, like the moment before a storm breaks. Claire had already returned. She was in the living room, pacing, arms folded, lips pressed tight like she was holding back everything that wanted to explode. The moment she saw me, she stepped forward. "You don't have to do this," she said quickly, as if speed could soften the inevitable. "We can talk to her. Set boundaries." I laughed. Loud, sharp, merciless. "Now you want boundaries?" I said. "Now, after she spent years tearing me down, and you watched her do it without lifting a finger?" "She's not well," Claire said, grasping at straws. She's evil," I snapped. "And you know it." Claire recoiled like I had slapped her. She turned her back to me, pacing the room like a caged animal. Then she spun around. "You're acting crazy." I stepped closer, my voice low but steady. "No. I'm finally thinking clearly." She didn't respond. She knew I meant it. That night, I sat in the living room with a glass of whiskey in my hand and fury in my chest. Everything was quiet, the kind of silence that feels wrong, like it's waiting to be shattered. I could hear Claire upstairs, moving around aimlessly, probably trying to figure out how to fix something that was already broken beyond repair. Then, headlights swept across the wall. They were here? Margaret. And Robert. The door creaked open, and the three of them entered. Claire led the way, her posture stiff, her expression unreadable. Margaret followed, her heels clicking like a countdown to confrontation, and Robert, he brought up the rear, his face tight, distant. Margaret didn't even give me time to speak. I assume you've come to your senses, she said, walking past me like she still owned the house. You owe me. I held up my hand, cutting her off. I owe you nothing. Her lips curled. You humiliated me in front of my family. I took a sip of my drink and stood. And you thought you'd walk away untouched? Claire stepped between us. Please, can we just talk without? No, I interrupted, glaring at Margaret. No more talking. No more letting this woman poison everything she touches. Margaret rolled her eyes. Are you really going to let one night ruin your life? I smiled, slow and deliberate. It wasn't one night. It was every dinner, every insult, every time you reminded Claire she could have done better. Robert shifted. What's going on? I turned to him. Tell me, Robert, did you know your wife's been paying a private investigator? Digging into my finances, my past, even my medical history? He blinked. What? Margaret snapped. He's lying. I pulled out the photos. And what about this? I laid them out on the table, her and Carson Hale, hand in hand at the resort, at dinner, checking into hotels under fake names. Robert stepped forward, I scanning the evidence. Each photo was a dagger. With every new image, his face lost more color. By the time he reached the last one, his hand was shaking. You've been cheating on me? He asked, voice hollow. Margaret faltered. It's not like that, eh? Save it, he hissed. All these years. I defended you. God help me. I defended you to everyone. I didn't speak. I didn't have to. Claire looked between them, her world crumbling at her feet. Her voice cracked. You had an affair? Margaret whirled on her. Don't look at me like that. I did what I had to do. Claire staggered back. You tried to ruin my husband. You've been following him, trying to destroy him. Why? Because he was never good enough for you. Margaret shouted. Because I had to protect you from making the biggest mistake of your life. Silence. Thick. Final. And then I spoke. I was never the mistake, Margaret. You were. She turned to me, fury blazing. You think you've won? You'll regret this. I took a step forward, my voice ablaze. No, Margaret. You will. She stormed out, again. But this time, no one followed her. Robert stood motionless. Claire sat on the edge of the couch, staring into nothing. For a moment, the only sound was my heartbeat, steady and strong. And in that silence, I felt it. Closure? Not yet. But it was coming. And I'd make sure it echoed. The door slammed behind Margaret. But this time, the silence she left in her wake was different. It wasn't tense. It wasn't waiting. It was hollow, like something had died, and we were just standing in the aftermath, unsure of what to do with the corpse. Robert didn't move. He stood by the coffee table, staring down at the photos with dead eyes. His shoulders were slumped, his mouth slightly open like he wanted to say something, but didn't know how. A man who had spent his whole life in service to a woman who just torched everything he built. Claire sat on the couch, her hands clenched in her lap. She didn't look at me. She couldn't. I think she finally saw it now, the monster behind the mask of pearls and power suits. The woman she once admired. The mother she trusted more than her husband. That illusion had crumbled. Good. I turned to Robert. You okay? He blinked, as if realizing for the first time I was still there. He stopped. His jaw flexed, then relaxed. I need air. Without another word, he walked out. Not storming. Not defeated. Just done. That left me and Claire. Again. She slowly looked up at me. Her eyes were rimmed red, but she wasn't crying. Not yet. You planned all of this, she said, her voice hoarse. I didn't respond right away. I just sat down across from her and poured myself a second drink. My hand didn't shake. My heart didn't race. I was steady. I planned to find the truth, I said. What happened next? Your mother did that all by herself. Claire swallowed hard. You wanted revenge. No, I said calmly. I wanted respect. And when no one gave it to me, I decided to stop asking. She looked away. Her fingers tightened on the edge of the cushion. So what now? I stood, taking a slow sip of my drink. Now? I stopped playing the part of the fool in a story someone else wrote. She flinched, and I didn't care. Not anymore. Later that night, I sat alone in the kitchen. The house was still. Claire had locked herself in the guest room. The master bedroom, our bedroom, felt like a tomb now. I had no desire to sleep in it ever again. I stared out the window, watching the wind move the tree branches, thinking back on the man I used to be. The man who tried so hard to be accepted, who thought love meant sacrificing parts of yourself until nothing remained. I didn't recognize that man anymore, and I didn't want to. A knock at the door startled me. I knew who it was before I even got up. Derek. I let him in. He tossed another folder onto the counter like it weighed nothing, but the look in his eyes said otherwise. I found more. I raised an eyebrow. More? He smirked grimly. You didn't think Gloria's affair and PI games were her only sins, did you? I opened the folder and started flipping through the documents. My blood ran cold. Bank records. Shell accounts. Unreported income. Large payments sent to a specific investigator, one who had ties to threats, harassment, and if rumors were true, worse. She's been funneling money through multiple fronts, Derek explained. We're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars. Hidden real estate. Off-the-book business holdings. I exhaled slowly. Where was it all going? He tapped one of the papers. Most of it. Toward gathering blackmail. On you mostly. But there are other names. Politicians. Lawyers. Even Robert's associates. I stared at him. She's been building an empire of leverage. He nodded. Exactly. She's not just toxic. She's dangerous. And now she's exposed, Derek said. The web's collapsing. Her contacts are bailing. Lawyers are distancing themselves. And guess who leaked the first batch of files to the press? I smiled faintly. Let me guess. You. He shrugged. I made sure the right people found the truth. The rest took care of itself. I let out a slow breath. She's going to come after me. She's got nothing left, he said. The power's gone. The respect? Gone. The money? Frozen. And her reputation? Burned. And still, I didn't feel satisfied. I felt free. The next morning, Claire knocked on my bedroom door. Not timid. Not demanding. Just there. I didn't answer. She opened it anyway, stepping into the room like she was stepping into a memory. She didn't look angry anymore. She looked lost. She's ruined, she said softly. Everything's gone. My father's divorcing her. The house. The money. The name. I nodded. She did it to herself. Claire hesitated. But you knew this would happen, didn't you? I looked at her. I didn't know, but I hoped. She swallowed hard, then whispered, I don't know what to do. I studied her for a long moment. That depends. Do you still want to live in her shadow? Or are you finally ready to step out of it? Her lips parted slightly. She didn't answer. And in that silence, I saw it. Not just guilt. Not just grief. But mourning. The realization that she had let the one person who truly loved her slip through her fingers while chasing her mother's approval. I stood. You should go see your father, I said gently. He's going to need support. She didn't move. Just stared at me, her eyes wet, her posture fragile. I don't think I love you anymore, Claire, I said quietly. And I don't think you ever really loved me. Not in the way I needed. She broke then. Not dramatically. Not loudly. Just quietly, like a porcelain cup cracking from the inside. And I walked past her, because I had nothing left to give. I didn't look back as I walked out of that house. Not once. The morning air was sharp against my face, but I welcomed it. It felt like truth, cold, clear, undeniable. I climbed into my car, shut the door, and just sat there for a moment. My hands rested on the steering wheel, the keys idle in the ignition. My chest rose and fell slowly, the silence around me strangely comforting. That house, it had once been a dream, a symbol of commitment, of building a life together. But now, it was just drywall and lies. The place where my dignity had been tested, buried, and finally reclaimed. I started the engine and pulled away. I didn't drive far, just to a quiet spot overlooking the city skyline. The view was wide and endless, a canvas of opportunity. I parked, got out, leaned against the hood of my car, and just breathed. Claire had been my everything once. Or maybe it was the idea of her, the version I had created in my head. The kind woman, the partner, the protector. That woman I would have burned the world for. But the woman I married had slowly, methodically let me die by 1,000 emotional cuts. And I let her. Not anymore. My phone buzzed. A message from Derek. It's all over the news. She's finished. I opened the article he linked. Socialite Margaret Dalton exposed in widespread financial fraud, blackmail scandal. The headlines were brutal. Photos of her outside her attorney's office. Hair a mess. No makeup. The icy mask shattered. There were statements from former associates, anonymous sources, and whispers about federal investigations. Her world, built on secrets and intimidation, was falling apart brick by brick. I smiled. Not out of cruelty, but out of justice. No more hiding. No more masks. The truth was out. By midday, Claire showed up at my apartment. She looked pale, thinner somehow. Her makeup was gone. Her posture, usually so proud, was deflated. I didn't say anything as I opened the door. I didn't need to. She stepped inside like a ghost. Quiet. Careful. I packed up the house, she said softly. Your things are in storage. I didn't throw anything out. I nodded once. Thanks. She looked around the room, as if seeing it for the first time. The simplicity of it. The quiet. The peace. Feels like home, she whispered. I didn't reply. She sat on the edge of the armchair, fingers intertwined. I've been thinking a lot, she said. About everything. About how I became her. How I let her voice drown out yours. Drown out mine. I leaned against the counter and listened. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, she said. And I'm not here to beg for it. I wanted to say I'm sorry. Truly. I see it now. All of it. And I know I threw something good away. Her voice cracked. You were the only one who ever really fought for me. And I never once fought for you. Tears welled in her eyes. She didn't wipe them away. I was scared, she continued. Scared of disappointing her. Of not being enough. And I thought, siding with her kept me safe. But it didn't. It just made me someone I don't even recognize. I watched her fall apart quietly, her pain folding in on itself. I walked over, stood in front of her, and said the only thing I had left. I loved you, I said. So much. But I don't trust you anymore. And love without trust, it's just memory. She nodded, lips trembling. I know. We stood in silence for a long moment, the weight of the past pressing between us. Then she stood, composed herself, and reached for her purse. I'm leaving the city, she said. I need to get away. Start over somewhere far from her, and far from what I became. She moved toward the door, then paused. I hope you find peace, she said softly. And someone who gives you what I couldn't. I gave her a faint smile. I already found the first part. She left. And just like that, the chapter closed. Weeks passed. Margaret's empire crumbled. Robert filed for divorce. Her so-called friends vanished. The media tore through her carefully curated life like wolves. She was evicted, forced to sell her jewelry to pay legal fees. The woman who once called me disgusting was now a disgraced headline, mocked, pitted, forgotten. As for me, I lived. I got a smaller place. Quiet. Clean. No ghosts in the corners. I went to the gym again. Picked up my old camera. Traveled. Nothing extravagant. Just long drives. New places. New faces. I talked to people who didn't know my story. Who didn't see me as a victim. Just a man starting over. Derek asked if I was ready to date again. Eventually, I said. And eventually came. One night, at a gallery opening downtown, I met someone. Her name was Sienna. Confident. Smart. A little sarcastic. She didn't ask me about my past. She asked me about the present. About what made me laugh. What music I liked. What scared me. What I wanted to become, not what I had been. We talked for hours. And I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. As I walked her to her car that night, I looked up at the stars and realized I was no longer waiting for life to start. It already had. I had been broken, manipulated, humiliated. But I wasn't bitter. I was free. And in that freedom, I didn't find revenge. I found myself. Looking back, I realized the story was never just about betrayal. It was about rediscovery, of strength, of self-worth, of the quiet courage to walk away from what no longer serves you. The biggest mistake I made wasn't trusting the wrong people. It was forgetting to trust myself. I spent years tolerating disrespect in the name of keeping the peace, believing love meant sacrifice without boundaries. But love without respect is just submission dressed up in silence. To anyone out there, especially those who've lived long enough to know life doesn't hand out do-overs easily, let me say this. It's never too late to stand up for your dignity. Whether you're 70 or 17, you deserve peace, not permission. You deserve to be valued, not tolerated. Don't confuse loyalty with weakness. Don't let fear of loneliness chain you to people who make you feel small. Life's too short to waste in the shadow of someone else's control. I didn't just lose a marriage. I shed a weight I didn't know I was carrying. And in doing so, I found something far more powerful than revenge. I found peace. And at this stage in life, that's worth everything.